Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Losses Above Replacement, the greatest baseball podcast, two greatest years. I'm today's host, Matthias Altman Kurosaki, back for a second day in a row, but this time around, I am with Ryan Splash Potts, my only co-host today. Splash was absent for our AL predictions, but he's here for our NL predictions. So, Splash, first things first, we had a wild day of baseball. How are you doing now? I realize I said good afternoon. It is the evening. How are we doing on this fine Monday evening?
Oh God. It's been like a total roller coaster the last 2-3 days. So, the Braves win Friday, they win Saturday. Boise State beats Washington State on Saturday. Unfortunately, Alex and I were not on coinciding shows, so I couldn't mention that. And then Sunday happens. The Diamondbacks win, the Mets win, the Braves lose. It's like, bro, Monday has to matter. The Ravens win Monday or Sunday night, which is great, and the Braves lose game 1 today. We will discuss, I'm sure. And then they win game 2, which is like I don't know. I always feel like the big games are supposed to have like a climactic ending, but this is one that there's probably 5 highlights from the entire game. So it was just I don't know. It just felt like a normal Sunday baseball game as opposed to game 162 because it didn't matter for the Mets. So,
yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I definitely feel that whole roller coaster thing because, boy, today was wild. I mean, seriously, I thought, it felt like Spencer Schwellenbach was going to go 9 innings. The Mets literally could not touch him. And then, they take the lead and they give the lead up. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy first game. Lindor, I mean, that was an MVP performance. I would just like to point that out. I understand that Ohtani's probably going to win it, but in my head, Lindor is the MVP. And Edwin Diaz threw 40 pitches today. Apparently, he said to Carlos Mendoza that he was going to go back out, even though Jeremy Hefner had literally just told him that he was not going to go back out. So I guess shout out to Edwin Diaz for backing up what he was saying. It was bananas, but that I think was probably the game of the year. I'm sure when MLB Network does their countdown at the end of the season, that will probably be number one, if not near the top. But like I said earlier, we are doing our NL playoff predictions today. Alex has sent in his to us to read out during the show. So we're going to start with the wild card series, and let's start first off with the 3 versus 6 matchup. The New York Mets going back to Milwaukee. They just finished the season against the Brewers. They're going back to Milwaukee to open the playoffs. So Mets at Brewers. Splash, I'll let you go first on this one. Who do you got here? What do you see happening?
I still don't trust Milwaukee's pitching. I know the Mets aren't like the 90s Braves or the 2024 Mariners exactly with the rotation, but Luis Severino is going to give you a real shot to likely win game 1. And after that, you just have to split. You got to split the last 2. So I have the Mets advancing in 3 games.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you right now, Alex has the Brewers winning in 2 games. And I'll tell you this much. I'm going to preface this by saying I do not have a ton of expectations. I'm trying to go in here with an open mind, expecting whatever. As I've said previously, it is a miracle that this team is even in the playoffs, considering they were 11 games under 500 in June. So the Mets only went 1-5 against Milwaukee, but they've gotten a couple of cracks at them. They actually were able to beat them on Sunday. And yes, they are 4-20 in Milwaukee over their last 24 games there. And the Brewers, I mean, they've won 12 of the last 14 matchups, but I think maybe getting that first look at Milwaukee actually benefits the Mets here. So I actually have the Mets winning this series in 3 games, and I think it's going to be close, actually. Like you said, I don't necessarily trust that Milwaukee starting rotation, but I do think they have a very good bullpen, whereas I think the Mets have a stronger starting rotation, but probably not as great of a bullpen. And I'd say the bullpen is still the Mets' weakest link, but they have been better as of late. So the two of us have the Mets moving on. Alex has Milwaukee advancing. Let's move on to the other side of things. Your Atlanta Braves going to Petco Park to take on the San Diego Padres. who again, this another team that I feel like has defied expectations. I did not have them making the playoffs this year, at least. I mean, it's crazy. You trade Juan Soto and somehow you play even better. Their first 90-win season in 14 years. So I'll go first on this one. Unfortunately for the Braves, they had to burn a lot of their arms today, and they won't have Chris Sale or Spencer Schwellenbach for that matter. Who I don't know who starts game 2. Who does? I don't even know who starts game 1 for them. If I'm being completely honest, Splash. Because Reynaldo Lopez had to pitch today too. Grant Holmes had to pitch. Charlie Morton pitched on Sunday.
I'd probably be freed
on short rest
game 1. That's the scary thing, because you go into Friday thinking, okay, we have 5 games, we have 5 starters for those 5 games, and then Sale gets scratched. You have to double use Holmes, so he's not wouldn't be available to get innings. You've had to use Lopez twice. By the way, he was electric, bro. Reliever Lopez,
yeah.
Inject that into my veins too. But I guess you go freed on you're looking at Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's 3 days rest, so short rest for Fried. And then Saturday you are cobbling a bullpen game together. I don't exactly, because Charlie Morton on 2 days rest is a recipe for disaster. So perhaps you go with Lopez as like a opener type, and you really need to win game 1 with Fried, assuming he starts game 1. Then you have like an opener, cobble it together game 2, cobble it together game 3. That's a brutal situation. Of course, with Sale going down with an injury, with back spasm, so he was scratched from game 2, and the Braves just kept saying, oh, we're going to push him back until the Braves are facing elimination. The Braves face elimination, and it comes out, oh, he's scratched. His back flared up the night before. It's just brutal, and you burn through Schwellenbach, who was unbelievable. Both starts against the Mets in the last week, but he can't, unless he's coming in for an inning in potential game 3, he's not pitching. So sort of burnt the candle at both ends there for Atlanta.
Yeah. So looking at this matchup, I think San Diego has it lined up pretty well, and I have the Padres winning in 2 games. Really, their bullpen has been fantastic this year, especially after getting Jason Adam, Tanner Scott, and Brian Hoeing. You pair that with Robert Suarez and Jeremiah Estrada. And then their offense, I think, is electric. Big fan of Jackson Merrill, Jurickson Profar. I mean, who saw that year coming? Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado finally got hot and started playing like Manny Machado. Their one piece they're really missing is Ha-Seong Kim. But this is a great team. So I have to go San Diego in 2, and Alex has San Diego in 3. So what do you see happening? You can give me the Homer version. You can give me the honest version. What do you got?
I don't know. Maybe the Homer version is the Braves take game 1 and then they lose game 2 and game 3. I think San Diego advances. I would lean probably San Diego in 3 games. Just sort of the Braves have kind of run out of gas in the starting pitching department with the weather situation and Sale's injury situation and having to dip back into Lopez. Alternate universe, Lopez is good to go in game 2, but now it looks like Lopez. No sources on this. No sources. Best case scenario, I think, is he is 1 time through the order on Wednesday in game 2, which would be really sketchy. He is a former reliever. I will point that out. So it's not like he hasn't done this song and dance before, but he had 25 starts, was phenomenal as an all-star as a starter, and now this snip, snap, I don't think is the best in the case of being like I'll say elite starter for this season, not necessarily the next 5 seasons, but he was elite this year. I don't know if you want to screw with that.
Yeah, and I'll say this much about the whole Chris Sale situation is that unfortunately this is something that I've seen a lot with Jacob deGrom over the years, where it's, all right, we want to give him extra rest too. We'll start him when we need to start him. He really knows his body better than anyone else too. He's been scratched with an injury, and unfortunately that's the same path Sale went down. And I understand that they said that he didn't feel the spasms until last night, but it's a tough break. You have to burn, or you can't use your Cy Young favorite.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have Padres in 2. So all 3 of us have San Diego. Moving on. So let's go to the NLDS, which for the 2 of us is Mets versus Phillies. For Alex, it's the Phillies and the Brewers. So who do you have? Mets, Phillies. I'm sure this series would drive you crazy. Who do you have winning this?
I'd hate watch the entire series. I just hate watch. I'm booing everything. I'm booing everything that happens. Pete Alonso hits a home run.
Look,
boo.
That's how Phillies Braves felt the last 2 years for us. So
it's like Wheeler strikes out Alonso, boo. Alonso hits a homer, boo. So yeah, Pete Alonso, pal. We need to have a conversation. I know I'm not the Mets fan here, but
boy, oh my God, that dude is.
Can we show some fight here? Can we show some enthusiasm?
His fight is chasing sliders in the dirt. Unfortunately.
So my homer pick here is Mets in 4 to troll the Phillies. I do think the Phillies advance in 4 games. They'll have their pitching set up. They'll have their fully rested bullpen. Hey, they have to deal with the whole 5 days being off.
Exactly. You never know.
Maybe that's something. And I did point out when we talked about why the Phillies won't win the World Series a couple of weeks ago, the Phillies, to me, are a bit of a front runner team. And when you are playing the underdog, that's one thing. But they are not the underdog. They are favorites. They are supposed to win this series. Last year against Atlanta, they weren't supposed to win. Last year against Arizona, they were supposed to win. They choke away Game 6 and Game 7. This year, they're supposed to win. Unless they face the Dodgers, they're supposed to win. They're supposed to be the Mets. They were supposed to be the Brewers. So if they lose Game 1 or Game 2 in Philly, especially if they lose Game 2 and you go back to Queens, that could get sketchy, but I do have the Phillies taking care of the series in 4 games.
Yeah, and Alex also has the Phillies advancing. He has them going over Milwaukee in 4 games. So I will give you mine, which is, and call me a homer here, but I actually think the Mets played the Phillies really well this year, including taking 3 of 4 from them in their last series. And this is the thing, is the Phillies won the overall season series 7-6, but the Mets played them tough. A lot of those games were close 1-run games, except for that last series. It felt like, with the exception of the series finale, the Mets won pretty convincingly. So I actually think, first of all, this would be crazy if the Mets and Phillies do match up. I went to school with a lot of Phillies fans in college, so I'm sure it would drive us all insane. But I have the Mets winning in 5. I think basically, I'll tell you this, is that the Phillies are great at home, but I think what the Mets need to do, if they can just win 1 game, one of the first 2 games in Philadelphia, I think they have a great shot to win. So I have the Mets advancing. Let's move on to the other side of things, which all of us have the Dodgers and Padres. I'll go first here. The Padres actually match up really well with the Dodgers, I think. They played LA tough all year and actually won the season series 8 out of 13. So, I watched San Diego all summer. Something feels there's something in the air in San Diego. And like I was saying about the Mets against the Phillies, if the Padres just steal 1 game against the Dodgers at Chavez Ravine, I think this is their series to lose. I have San Diego winning in 4 games over LA. It's 2022 Redux. And I'm sure I feel like those games are going to be electric. Those are 2 very, very exciting squads. So what do you see playing out?
Again, like you said, 2022 rematch, Dodgers, Padres. Of course, the Padres did win that series, and famously so. You have was that a Goose series?
I
don't think it was a goose.
Duck? It was a what?
It was some animal. It's like a duck or a goose.
I must have missed that.
Really?
I do not remember.
San Diego Goose.
I mean, I'm sure I know
yeah, the Rally Goose.
Chicken. The Rally Goose.
The Rally Goose.
Yeah. I do remember the Rally Goose. Yes.
So I don't know if a goose is going to land on the field this year, but the Dodgers are a juggernaut. And listen, you get enough bites at the apple. I think they are going to bite the apple this year. I think they're going to advance past the NLDS. Congratulations. Imagine that. Neither the Braves or Dodgers getting eliminated in the NLDS. Would you look at that? I have the Dodgers advancing in 4 games. I don't trust the pitching for a longer series, which we'll get to, but this is a lineup with Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and Smith and Hernandez and Teoscar Hernandez, although Kike Hernandez will probably have a home run at some point in the playoffs, knowing him. And it's just a team that's played a lot better of late. They ended up getting to 98 wins just a couple weeks ago. We were having the conversation, or maybe not us particularly, but baseball community was having the conversation. Is anyone going to win 95 games? Yes, the Dodgers won 98 games. They are a bad series here or there away from winning 100 games yet again. So I have the Dodgers in 4.
And I'll say this, that I was saying this about the Yankees on the AL side, which is the Dodgers have probably the highest ceiling of any team in this bracket. I mean, there's a reason they were the only team in baseball with a 600 winning percentage. They have all sorts of talent. Can they put it all together? I mean, like you were saying, I don't trust the pitching staff at all, actually. I mean, I'm assuming they're going with who? Jack Flaherty game 1?
Yes.
Yoshi Yamamoto game 2? I mean, they don't have Dustin May. They don't have Tyler Glasnow. They don't have Clayton Kershaw. Their bullpen, I mean, Michael Kopech is amazing. He's never pitched in the postseason. I mean, Evan Phillips, Daniel Hudson, they've been there before. Alex Vecia's been there before. It's a lot of question marks for me.
It'll go Flaherty, Yamamoto, Buehler, and then Landon Knack.
Buehler. And that's the thing is, though, like, Buehler hasn't necessarily been Walker Buehler this year. Right. If this was Walker Buehler, say 2 years ago, even or 3 years ago, I would trust him.
I don't know about 3 years ago. He got
actually 3 years ago. He got lit up by the Braves and then LCS. So
good memories for me for once.
What's it called? So Alex has the the Dodgers winning in 3 games. Wow, that's a sweep. Those are becoming increasingly rare, it feels, even though I know there was one last year, but it feels like we don't get a ton of playoff sweeps all the time. I know we haven't had a World Series sweep in 12 years, which is hard to believe, but the Giants are the last team to sweep a World Series. So let's move on to the NLCS. For me, that's the Padres and the Mets. For you, that is the Phillies and the Dodgers, as it is for Alex. So, Splash, you go first here. Who is taking home the National League pennant?
Unfortunately, for us NL East fans, I think it'll be the Phillies again. This is just a case of the Phillies have more arms than you do. There are some teams that I think match up well with Philadelphia. Like you said with the Mets, I think they have a reasonable shot to beat them in a 5-game series. I think the Braves, if Sale is healthy, have a reasonable shot to beat them in a 7-game series. I think the Padres have a reasonable shot of beating them in a 7-game series. But I don't quite think the Dodgers are built to win 7-game playoff series with the injuries to Glasnow and Kershaw. And what are you going to get out of Yamamoto? He just recently came back off the IL. It's not like he's been built up for 6 months like other pitchers. And no Ohtani on the mound this year. Next year, we can have a different conversation with Glasnow and everyone back. But this year, I think the Phillies, they might run roughshod over here and win in 5 games. So Phillies 4, Dodgers 1.
I will say, if the Phillies do make it to the NLCS, they are probably best equipped for a 7-game set. They have all sorts of arms in that rotation. And their bullpen, I mean, I entered the year wondering, like, what the heck to expect from the Phillies bullpen. I didn't know who their closer was. I didn't know who their high leverage arms were going to be besides Orion Kerkering. And they've been outstanding this year. I mean, it's not common you get 2 non-closing pitchers to the All-Star game, but they had that this year with Matt Strom and Jeff Hoffman. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, Jeff Hoffman was completely written off by the league. I mean, he was a starter. He was a first-round pick. Never really got it going. He got signed by the Phillies last year, learns how to throw in the high 90s, triple digits. Now he's arguably the best setup man, or one of the best setup men in baseball. So, I mean, hats off to the Phillies for finding a way to develop some arms for that bullpen. Orion Kerkering is also really, really good. And he went from A-ball last year to the majors.
So he pitched in the playoffs. Yes. I know he pitched against Atlanta in the playoffs.
He was good in the NLDS. In the NLCS, he had a couple of blow-up outings against the Diamondbacks. But Alex also has the Phillies winning the pennant. He has Nick Castellanos winning Series MVP. Who do you have winning Series MVP?
Oh boy, this we'll go with Zach Wheeler. 2 starts.
Zach Wheeler. I can see that.
Yeah,
and Wheeler.
Game 1,
I mean,
Game 5, maybe.
It's hard for me to watch him at play for the Phillies, but I can't help but root for the guy. It feels like I always say that the biggest mistake of the Brody Van Wagenen era in New York was letting Wheeler walk, because they really did not replace him adequately. They replaced him with, Michael Wacha and Rick Porcello are not bad pitchers necessarily, but they are not aces.
We will respect one Cy Young Award winner, Rick Porcello.
Yes.
Hey, Michael Wacha, in theory, is starting a playoff game in a couple days.
Yes.
He's going to start a playoff game.
Is he an ace, though? That's the thing. He's not an ace.
Well,
I mean, he's a good pitcher. I'll give him that. Then again, it was the 2020 pandemic season, and neither of them lived up to their contracts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have the Padres and the Mets, and as much as I want to say the Mets win the pennant, there's something about this Padres team. I know the Mets won 5 of the 7 games against San Diego, but it's they swept them at Citi Field. The Padres are really good at Petco Park, and I think that having the home field advantage is going to help them. I think this is going to go down to the wire. I'm going with San Diego here in 7 games. I know I really, really wanted to pick the Mets here, but the Padres are going to be a very tough out here in October. So, and I'm going to go with Jackson Merrill as the NLCS MVP. Jackson Merrill terrorized the Mets this year. He had a walk-off home run to end their series at Petco Park off Edwin Diaz. He hit a pair of home runs against them at Citi Field. And, I mean, for a young guy, he's quite the player. And remember, this guy's a former shortstop playing center field for the first time. Pretty good center fielder.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. And if it weren't for Paul Skeens, he'd probably be the runaway National League Rookie of the Year. Well, actually, I don't know about runaway because, you have Imanaga and Jackson Churio, but
hey, Spencer Schollenbach.
And Spencer Schollenbach. That's the thing. By the way, this year's NL rookie class is insane. But I have to go Mason San Diego Wynn. Here.
Michael Bush.
Yeah, Michael Bush. Yeah, Mason Wynn, like you were saying. It's crazy. Orion Kerkering's also a rookie now that I think.
Tyler Fitzgerald, he kind of fell off, but
yeah, wow,
he was good for half a season.
Exactly. But it's wow, those are a lot of names now that I think about it. But yeah, I have Jackson Merrill going above and beyond. So let's move to the World Series then. So for Alex, that is the Phillies and the Yankees. For Splash, that is the Phillies and the Astros. And for me, that is the Padres and the Astros. Full disclosure, the Phillies-Astros was my preseason prediction. And I did not have, like I said earlier, I did not have San Diego making the playoffs. But I think that something about the San Diego team. So why don't you go first again here, Splash? Who do you have raising the trophy this year?
So raising the piece of metal preseason, I had the Astros. I have a futures bet on the Astros. I think it was like $50, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was 10. Maybe 10 to win 50. That sounds about right. I had them over the Braves for what it's worth. But as the season's transpired and they've had these ebbs and flows, I didn't lose faith that they would make the playoffs. I didn't lose faith that my prediction in our American League preview that the Mariners would lead the AL West deep into the season and would miss the playoffs and the Astros would make the playoffs. Didn't lose faith in that, but I have lost faith in this Astros rotation depth-wise. And as you said with the Phillies, they are just, it's arms on top of arms on top of arms. And I don't think that if you play the World Series 100 times, if you play the playoffs 100 times, I don't know if the Phillies are the best team to do that. But when you play it once, the Phillies step up to the plate and they win these things. And I think they would have that underdog feel both against the Dodgers in the series, my proposed, I guess, NLCS, and in the Astros series in the World Series. So unfortunately, again, I have the Phillies in 6 and World Series MVP Bryce Harper.
And like I said earlier, I think the Phillies, if they do get to these best of 7 series, I can see them winning. I think this is a great ball club, super, super talented. And, there's a reason why before the season, I had the Phillies going to the World Series. Much like you, I also had Houston winning the World Series coming into the year. I had them beating Philadelphia in a rematch of the 2022 series. So, first of all, I'll tell you one thing. Alex has the Phillies winning also. He has them beating the Yankees in 6 games and has Nick Castellanos also winning World Series MVP. Alex, I guess, is a big Castellanos fan.
Should we pray for safety? Should
we might want to.
I guess it is an election season, so
it is, yeah.
Okay. I see the vision, Alex. I see the vision.
So I will say this much: if you may recall that Houston started the year 7-19, and seemed like everyone was like, "Oh my God, Houston's going to sell. They're going to trade Verlander. They're going to trade Tucker. They're going to trade, Alex Bregman."
They probably should have traded Bregman.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but and if you counted Houston out at any point, I don't know what to tell you because there was no way they were going to let that happen. Seriously, I mean this team was way too good, way too talented to just fall apart and never recover. So major props to them. I felt like once they took over the AL West, especially like the AL was theirs to lose.
Mm.
I look at this matchup and one thing I said earlier, like, yes, San Diego is very good at Petco Park, but they're even better on the road. They're 48-33 on the road this year. Houston is a juggernaut. Like I said, it's hard to poke holes in this roster for me. Like I said earlier, they were 7-19. They didn't have a single losing month after the month of April. Up and down, I think this is a pretty even series. But watching the Padres this summer, this feels like a team of destiny situation. Especially just looking at the way they clinched their playoff spot last week. I was watching that game. I threw it on because I was editing that night for Mesmerized, and I had to stay up for the end of the playoff games. And I saw first and second, it's 4-2, none out. I threw the game on during the 9th inning. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a tie game. Probably going to stay up all night watching this game. And then Manny Machado starts an around the horn triple play. And I remember when Miguel Rojas hit that ball, I thought it was going down the line and both runs were scoring. It's plays like that make you think this is the team of destiny. So I think for the first time in their franchise's history, the San Diego Padres will be World Series champions. They are going to beat the Houston Astros in 7 games. For those of you longtime viewers, longtime listeners, you may recall that last year before the season, I picked San Diego to beat Houston in the World Series. Maybe I was just a year early. So give me San Diego in 7 games, World Series MVP, Jurickson Profar, putting a cap on this outstanding season he's had. I will say another guy I'd consider is one of the relievers. I think Robert Suarez maybe has a great postseason. I like I said, I think this team is incredibly dangerous. If you're in the National League, that is a team you do not want to face in the playoffs. So, I mean, buckle up. I think this postseason is going to be wild. So, any other thoughts on this postseason picture or how you think it's going to shake out?
Who's your pick for the Babe Ruth Award? So that's similar to the Hockey Conn Smythe MVP of the entire playoffs, not just the World Series.
MVP of the entire playoffs?
I wonder who Alex is picking.
Well, I think we know who Alex is picking because would it have to come from the winning team?
No, I don't believe so. I will look up the history of it, but not as far as I'm aware.
Because I feel like it could be. I feel like it's going to be someone on the Astros, honestly.
So most recent winner is Adolis Garcia. Okay. There have been players who did not win World Series MVP who won the Babe Ruth Award, which is quite strange.
Or like they were on teams that didn't win the World Series.
Yes, Randy Arozarena, for example, is the most recent to not win the World Series. Freddie Freeman won the Babe Ruth Award, did not win World Series MVP, although that kind of makes sense. David Price, John Lester, Wade Davis, A-Rod, Lincecum, Papelbon, Keith Folk. Wow.
Keith Folk in 04 was nasty.
I'm trying to find another one who wasn't on the winning team, but that seems to be troubling.
Okay, well, I'll put out two candidates here. One, I think, is Yordan Alvarez. It feels like Alvarez does not shy away from the bright lights. Yes, he went cold in the 2021 World Series after his monstrous ALCS, and he went relatively quiet in the ALCS in 2022, but it feels like that guy always comes up with big moments. So I think Alvarez would be one. And then if I'm going with someone from the NL side, from the Padres, honestly, I think either Jackson Merrill or Manny Machado. Machado has caught fire. He's played like the MVP Manny Machado we thought we'd see. I'm still waiting on him to win an MVP award, by the way. It's kind of crazy. And, I think Machado is an incredibly talented player. I just wish he hustled a little more. One thing that drives me insane watching him is how he'll hit a ground ball. Maybe you can beat him out, but nope, he's jogging down the first baseline. But then you see him make those amazing plays like that triple play the other day. But yeah, I think any of those guys can win it. Who do you think?
So I think it'll be like a Zach Wheeler type or Aaron Nola, but I would lean Wheeler. He's been great in the playoffs, the lowest whip ever. As far as I'm aware, with a minimum of innings. If you're looking at Houston, you mentioned the relievers. I could see that Framber Valdez, who is a spotty playoff resume, but if the Astros were to make the World Series, he'd have to be reasonably good. Yordan Alvarez is obviously a reasonable pick, but I would go with Zach Wheeler or Bryce Harper. I feel like if the Phillies were to win the World Series, these sorts of awards would go to the Harpers or the Wheelers of the world. Yeah. Like there's some teams like the 2018 Red Sox with Steve Pearce or the 2021 Braves with Rosario and Soler that, some teams just feel like, oh, it's going to be a random guy. Well, then there's some teams that are so star driven that I don't know if a World Series makes sense that the Phillies win, but Harper sucks. Or isn't the MVP of the series, basically.
And Harper's another guy like Alvarez. He doesn't shy away from the big moments. And that was one thing when he got to the playoffs with the Phillies. I wanted to see, could he do better than what he did with Washington? Because really, he wasn't great with the Nationals in the postseason. But he balled out in the NLDS, balled out in the NLCS. He wasn't bad in the World Series, even though they lost. So I could see that. I realized I made it through talking about the Padres without mentioning their rotation. They have a pretty good rotation, actually. I was wondering how Michael King would do as a starter for a full season. And look, struck out 200 batters, had a 2.9 ERA over 173 innings. Dylan Cease, I was not particularly high on Dylan Cease coming into the year because I thought he walked too many batters. And he still walks guys, but 224 strikeouts in 189 innings. He threw a no-hitter. Joe Musgrove started to lock in too, by the way. Joe Musgrove started to look more like Joe Musgrove. I know that we Mets fans are still kind of salty about, what happened in 2022 with Joe Musgrove, but he's a very good pitcher. I don't want to take that away from him. And Yu Darvish came back, and his ERA, he finished the year with a 3.3. He's 37. He's the veteran of the rotation, but it's actually a pretty well-rounded rotation. I feel like they're pretty underrated in that way. And like I said, their bullpen is fantastic. I can see any of these guys, Suarez, Morejon, Estrada, Adams, Scott. It's honestly going to be a bit of a roster crunch. I wonder who gets left off. And that's the other thing. Some of the guys that we saw playing down the stretch maybe won't be on the postseason roster. Particularly for the Mets, I'm curious to see if they carry Luis Angel Acuna on the postseason roster. He was a late season addition. Or Brett Beatty was seen celebrating with the team in the locker room. Is Brett Beatty going to somehow make it onto the postseason roster? I have a number of questions. but I'm sure we'll all have them answered. So, anyways, I say we go ahead and move on to how we end basically every show, which is with the moment to ourselves, 60 seconds or so to talk about whatever the heck is on our mind. I'm sure we have plenty to talk about since the postseason does begin tomorrow, and today was an incredibly long day. So, Splash, do you want to go first here?
Sure, I can go.
All right, your time starts in 3, 2, 1, begin.
Okay, first, shout out to Boise State and shout out to the Baltimore Ravens. Good job, boys. Monday, September 30th. I woke up at 2:15, like I do every Monday, because I work overnights. And I wake up, and it's 2-0, top of the fifth inning, or end of the fourth, going into the top of the fifth. Wonderful. Schwellenbach immediately allows the first two guys to reach. Or at least allowed the first guy to reach. It's like, oh God, I'm going back to bed. Well, I stay up, I watch the game, and I'm like in bed. You know the whole like routine of getting up and you drink your water. It's okay. Anyways, top of the eighth, I'm finally out of my room, and I'll flip on the game. Schwellenbach allows a hit. Wonderful. Jimenez allows a hit. Wonderful. Jimenez allows another hit. Wonderful. Jimenez allows another hit. Oh God. Then Iglesias comes in. Okay, great. Allows the hit to the other Iglesias. Oh, God. Gets the sack fly. Okay, great. It's 4-3. Every Brandon Nimmo has just gone to the chop house. So I turned on the game, watched for 7 plate appearances. Those 7 plate appearances were hit, 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 sacrifice fly, hit. 6 runs. Very sad. I know the Braves won the second game. I get it, but that would have been nice to not have to stress about the second game. We would have had the Sale injury stress tomorrow, not today. That would be a very sad day, but I just want to give a shout out. Spencer Schwellenbach, 21 innings against the Mets this year, 2 earned runs. Ronaldo Lopez, 10 innings against the Mets, no runs. Absolute baller moves. We're not winning the World Series this year, but beating the Mets does give me some solace in the universe, and hopefully the Phillies lose in the World Series again.
Yeah, I mean, God, today was an absolute roller coaster. I'll say that when Albies hit that bases clearing double, I was like, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we go out and lose game 2 and not make the playoffs.
That's how I felt as soon as I get the Lindor. I saw in play runs. I wasn't watching the game at the point because I don't want to, like, they're going to get hit every single time. So I see in play runs, and I'm thinking, there's no way this is like a double off the wall, or this is a home run and Pierce Johnson just royally screwed us. And it's a home run. It's like, had to be Lindor, had to be in Atlanta again. What a year for Atlanta New York games. You had the walk-off. Nimmo had the walk-off. You had the game back in April on a Monday that was like 10-8 or something.
It was 8-7, yeah.
So what a wild, wacky year of. You have the rain delays. You have the hurricane. You play one game. You have 161, 162. What a wild year.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm that was honestly, it was a very evenly matched season series, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see what happens in future years.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to get to start Schwellenbach 3 out of 13 times the next year.
Yeah, that's the tough thing, is that the Mets literally had no clue how to hit that guy. I mean, Spencer Schwellenbach is nasty, and a former college shortstop sounds like someone else I know.
Anyway, I do want to throw it out there. There's a non-zero chance Spencer Schwellenbach is the best pitcher on the Braves next season in a rotation that has, assuming the reigning Cy Young, Chris Sale, and then the guy who I thought at least was the second best pitcher in baseball heading into this season.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. I think
Schwellenbach does like the things. It's like a combination of Fried, Sale, and Strider. It's like all of them into one. He has good velocity, not great velocity, but good velocity. He has a bunch of different pitches like Fried does, and he just doesn't walk people. And I love that because Strider walks too many guys. Sale doesn't. Fried, he was a little spotty this year. Big kahunas to Max Fried, though. His Friday start, 8 2/3, no runs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So hopefully he does that in San Diego before he joins the Padres this offseason.
Well, that's the team that drafted him.
Rejoins the Padres.
I also do not see him going to the Padres.
I don't know. He's going to somewhere in Southern California. So, Mac, I'll count you down.
All right, perfect.
3, 2, 1.
So I guess continuing on talking about the way today was, as a Mets fan, first of all, I was fully expecting to need Luis Severino today. Luckily, we can relax there, and Severino will pitch tomorrow. But I do want to say a big shout out to Edwin Diaz. I understand that Diaz had a very rocky 8th inning. He did not cover first base on Jared Kelenich's grounder. He then completely lost the strike zone and gave up bases clearing double to Ozzie Albies. But the fact that he went back out there, and remember, he threw 26 pitches yesterday in Milwaukee. He threw 40 pitches today. I don't know if Edwin Diaz has ever thrown 40 pitches in a game, but he buckled down when the team needed him. And I get that, everyone was dogging on him after that bases clearing double. And I understand there were reasons to be upset about it, but he stayed composed in that 9th inning. He convinced Carlos Mendoza to leave him in the game. And I understand that. I as a Mets fan, I remember when Matt Harvey did that. It did not end well. But this time around, he looked sharper in that 2nd inning. And he probably won't be available tomorrow. He probably won't be available for game 2. But I think he and Francisco Lindor, Lindor playing through that back injury, really laid their bodies on the line to get this team in the playoffs. And to go from 11 games under to 89 wins and a playoff appearance is pretty remarkable. So, as I said earlier, I'm entering with low expectations. If the Mets beat Milwaukee, great. If they don't, it's been a crazy season, and there are a lot of reasons to be proud of this team. So, OMG, and I hope Jose Iglesias is on this team next year.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same sentiments. Obviously, we got to 89 wins very differently.
Very differently.
Like, at one point, the Braves were 10 and a half games up on the Mets, and then the Mets passed the Braves by, if I recall, multiple games, and then eventually they end up at 89 anyways. And I want to have it's tough because I had the conversation with Alex previously I don't know if we aired that episode, but we got into a huge argument that I'm like, this is a World Series or bust season for the Braves. For the Dodgers, the Braves, the Phillies, and every year is a World Series or bust year for the Yankees because they're the Yankees. And we get into this heated debate about it. And I think that's true. And I think part of that is like the expectation you have, and you have the playoff disappointments in 22 and 23. You have the reigning MVP. You have the favorite to win the Cy Young. You have, Riley and Olsen and Harris and Murphy and all these like star level players you're bringing in. Chris Sale. You have Max Fried. And then the year goes about as wrong as it possibly can. That ends with a W next to your name at the end of the season. And it's so I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a disappointment because it is, but I also feel like it's an incredible accomplishment because it is.
Yeah. People were saying like, is Brian Snitker worthy of being in the manager of the year conversation? Because I think it's probably going to Pat Murphy or Mike Schild. But there are cases for Carlos Mendoza and Brian Snitker. I think both of them. Because they both had to overcome a lot. Like you were saying, I mean, the Braves were the consensus pick to win the NL East. And a lot of people had them going to the World Series. But, I mean, did anyone predict, Spencer Strider blowing out his elbow or Ronald Acuna tearing his ACL? No, I don't think so. And that's not even mentioning what happened to Austin Riley this year. So
and no Sean Murphy for multiple months.
Michael
Ozzie
Harris
Albies was sitting right-handed against a righty today.
Yeah.
By the way, he should do that full time.
He's as I say, he looks pretty good in those situations. He might want to consider just hitting right-handed.
Hey, he did it in the World Series against Zach Greinke.
And he's a very good right-handed hitter.
Better than Mike Trout.
Yeah, no, legit.
Whoa, let me take that back.
Against
when I got the stat, it was against lefties as a right-handed hitter. He's better than Mike Trout. He's not obviously not a better hitter than Mike Trout.
Well, I don't think so, at least. But
just
anyways, yeah. So anyways, that'll do it for us. Make sure, maybe you disagree or agree with our predictions. Well, make sure to let us know at LAR_baseball on Twitter. Make sure to follow me at Matthias_A_K. Follow Splash at Mr. Splashman19 and follow Alex at the Sports Guy 242. As I mentioned in the last episode, we will probably have to change our upload schedule thanks to, due to the various time commitments, between Alex having a new job and Splash working at night and my coaching schedule. So we'll keep you guys posted on what day we are uploading, but beware, we probably won't have one up next Tuesday morning. But like I said, follow us on Twitter. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Maybe you're listening on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Like I said, you'll be getting a lot of content from us all postseason long, all off-season long. So, thank you for bearing with us all regular season. Let's get ready for that postseason. So thank you all. Stay safe, and I hope to see you all real soon.